Hello, I'm Damien Barrett. Welcome to Access All Areas, brought to you by OPSM. It's been a massive week, particularly at the Carlton Footy Club. And as I welcome Lee Matthews, Lee, what's your view on this saga that has surrounded Brett Ratten and the Blues?
Well, we're working on the assumption that Mick Malthouse is going to be Carlton coach. Give me the odds, Damo. You know, you're connected.
Well, they're about the odds of your horse Sizzling going around in a Class 6 race. They're about $1.05 and probably into about $1.03 right now.
Okay, well, just assuming that Mick Malthouse will end up coaching Carlton. To me, it's like what football clubs recruit better players if they think there's better players than their current ones. And like what Fremantle did with Ross Lyon last year, they thought that he was a better coach than Mark Harvey, so they put him in. And it appears that's what Carlton have done. And, I mean, that they're doing what they think is best for the club, whether they're right or wrong, but that's their value judgment.
Yep. It's been happening for some time. I mean, it's even been talked about as far back as last year when Mick Malthouse was still at Collingwood. But the time frame on this, Lee, I think what we all learn these days in the new age, whatever that now means, no one can actually operate to their own time frame now, least of all footy clubs. And we raise that because we want to go take a look at what Stephen Kernahan, the president of Carlton, said as recently as Monday. We'll take a look now and we'll discuss it after that.
Look, whilst we're very emotional about the weekend and still are, it's only Monday, we won't be making knee-jerk reactions. We spoke, as I said, a few months ago and over the last few weeks to certain sections of the media. We're waiting till the end of the season. We'll look at all operations at the end of the season. The only difference is we now know when that is. It's the end of next weekend. We can't make the 8, which we're all very disappointed about, but we will have a look at everything then and then only. So we'll be running our agenda, not anyone else's agenda.
Stephen Kernahan there on CFC TV. Lee, that was Monday. That was 2 days after what was the end result for Brett Ratten, that being the loss to Gold Coast. They were never going to get through this week trying to do it to their time frame.
But wasn't it simply that Brett Ratten actually approached them early in the week and said, listen, let's tell me what's happening. And then after a little bit of half a day of toing and froing, they told him what they thought, well, what the situation was, and therefore it all become now rather than next week.
You're right. I mean, after that video was recorded, Brett Ratten went into Greg Swan, the CEO's office, and demanded answers. It took him more than 90 minutes to get any sort of formality, and even then it was Greg Swan's opinion on what he expected the board to do. But that, in Brett's eyes, was enough for him to know on Monday that it was it. And from that moment onwards, the words from Stephen Kernahan there were null and void, weren't they? I mean, it was going to play out in Brett Ratten's terms from that point on.
Well,
and it did because
I don't think the timing matters a whole lot.
Yep.
I mean, they allowed him to coach this week. He wanted to coach this week. No right or wrong in that. He's decided to do that. But once the decision is made, then you might, once it gets to the very end of the season, whether it's before round 23, as it is this year, or after, it's really only the timing.
Before we park the Brett Ratten part of this story, will he coach Port Adelaide next year? And should he coach Port Adelaide next year?
Well, it depends on the available candidates. I mean, I would have thought still, if they could get Rodney Eade over there, I think his experience at the two clubs, at the Swans and at the Bulldogs, and it's the old proven thing. He has got a team into a grand final. He's got a second team into top 4. So it's the proven as opposed to the unproven in terms of taking a club to the very top. So Rodney Eade's got that. So if Port could get him, I still think he seems to be the best of the available candidates.
And before we get into what Mick Malthouse is going to get at Carlton by way of its list, your own potential for coaching. Stephen Kernahan said yesterday they wanted a successful, proven premiership coach. If it's $1.03 Mick Malthouse going, that means there's still a chance for someone else. What if Jeannie Pratt picked up the phone today and said, Lee, you can write your own
The fact that you said Judy Pratt, well, she's vice president
she's
at least,
vice president,
I suppose. But a lot of factors behind this. No, I'm my. What
if she said $2 million?
My coaching
we want you
done.
$2 million. We want you.
No. I've decided.
You knock back a $6 million 3-year deal.
The rest of the years in my life, none of them are going to be devoted to coaching.
Okay. Well, in that case, I've asked you that a few times this year. I think we'll have to leave it now.
I think it's done.
Mick Malthouse, what will he get at Carlton? What's the list that he's got to work with?
Well, I think they're a very talented list. They got skill, they got speed, which is really valuable, so they can play really good footy. You look at 3 players, Yaron, Betts and Garlett.
Yep.
All got speed, all got skill. But I reckon that it's only those 3 players, but they need more grunt.
Right.
I mean, Mitch Robinson always grabs me because he plays with that over-the-top grunt and competitiveness. And I kind of think he's a little bit one out there. I mean, you could do with a little bit of the Mitch Robinson quality in some of their more skillful, speedier play. So to me, that makes them a little bit unpredictable. If things are flowing really well, they can play some unbelievably good footy, which they've done early in 2012. But I just think they can also fall apart a little bit too, which they've also done at other times of 2012. So that's the one Achilles heel. But certainly if the new coach, if Mick Malthouse can sort of just stiffen them up a little bit, get more competitive grunt out of more players, they've got the skill and the speed. That's hard to get.
They're happy to engage in conversations now around the potential of Travis Cloke becoming a Blue next year. Would you sort of rate it as equal importance, someone along that grunt scale to
Well,
add
they're hard to get. When I mean, I'm talking guys like Luke Hodge, Lenny Hayes, Joel Selwood, even Kevin Jack at the Swans. They're the ones, I guess, that I think of in this whole umbrella of competitive grunt. So it's hard to go and recruit those kind of guys. But I mean, Jared Waite's a really good player when he's up and really important for them. But he's been injured a fair bit. So you can imagine a Travis Cloke, big, strong, powerful. Key position player is always a good addition to your team.
Yeah, Lee, a lot of intriguing matchups in round 23. Probably the most intriguing is tonight, Hawthorn West Coast. For many reasons, what it'll do to the ladder for one of those reasons, but just also you've got Buddy Franklin and Nick Natanui on the same footy field. Take us through what the game's greatest player thinks of these two.
Well, it's the wow factor to me. I sometimes sit in the commentary box watching the game and you just subconsciously ooh and ah. And I get Surioli does that for me. And Natanui and this would have been the goal of forever. There has never been a time where a ruckman, no other player other than ruckman, has touched the ball and had a shot at goal. Yep. What he does, someone said to me the other day, he's like, there's the little dog who acts like a big dog and barks. He's a big dog who acts like a little dog and runs off and does ground level stuff.
I like it.
And we know what Franklin's been able to. They're just such unbelievable physical specimens who do just amazing things, and you say, how did he do that? And particularly for their size and shape. So them being on the ground at the one time, Rioli may be playing. I don't have to pay to go to the footy, but I would tonight. I mean, fantastic.
You were voted the player of the century, and obviously rightly so. But for you to talk so glowingly about some contemporary or current day players, it carries a lot of weight. I mean, you're glowing in your assessment of
It's
these
only
things.
the way you see them. I mean, Wade Carey's still the best player I've ever seen. I mean, best is about longevity. But the highlights reel of Natanui and Franklin and Rioli I put in the similar category. The wow factor that they create is just so exciting.
Is there anyone from the past that you liken them to from that wow factor?
You kind of think back. I mean, Gary Ablett Senior probably had this just did stuff all the time that you think, how did he do that? But I find it very hard to put anyone in the past 40 years in the category that Franklin and Natanui are in that capacity.
One of the other matches this weekend, Lee, is the one involving Fremantle. They can, if they choose to do so, manipulate where they finish. And we'll just highlight this here. They can finish 7th or 8th. And finishing 7th likely means they travel to Melbourne. Finishing 8th likely means they stay in Perth if West Coast loses tonight.
If West Coast loses tonight, they're 5th. So clearly what it means, if Fremantle finish 8th, they play in Perth. But if they finish 7th, they play in Melbourne. And when all the other games will have been played when their games start. It's the old tanking thing. It's not a matter of losing the game. It might be a matter of not winning by too much. Like if Fremantle are confronted by a situation, if you win by more than 10 goals, for instance, you're going to travel next week. If you win by less than 10 goals, you're going to stay in Perth. I know what I'd be doing if I was coach.
What's that?
I'd be trying to make sure we won by less than 10 goals.
Well, that's manipulating the result, isn't it? Inverted commas.
Yeah.
The result being the margin.
Well, not the result, the margin.
The margin. Yeah. But that's still the result of the game of football.
Yeah, if you want to... but really, I mean...
So you're Ross Lyon, and you would seek to have a result play out that way, that they stay in Perth?
I think I would. It's not trying to lose. That's a different thing altogether. But actually trying not to win by too much.
Yep.
A bit of list management can make that happen, I think.
At 3/4 time, he's probably going to have one of his assistant coaches or someone at the club tell him exactly what the scenario is for him to have that happen.
Yeah.
When you find out what it is to stay 8th and stay in Perth, you make sure that happens?
Well, you can work out it to a degree what players you want off the field, what players you want on the field. It's a bit hard to do that now because the rotation of players mean everyone's going on and off all the time. But I think it's not going against the integrity of the game to have a little thing in the back of your mind as we just don't want to win by too much. But It is a big. I mean, surely if I'm coach at Fremantle, surely you'd prefer to play in Perth the following week against the Eagles than come to Melbourne to play Geelong or someone like that. It's not so much the opposition, but saving the travel across the country. It'd have to be a good thing.
I hear what you're saying. I just reckon Ross Lyon is so competitive, probably as competitive a beast as there is in the AFL, and I reckon he will just let this game play. That's my take on his situation, and I reckon he'd be happy to take on a Geelong in Melbourne as he would be.
Well, but what it means is best case scenario, or the scenario they want, they're going to travel every week from now on.
Yeah.
So if you can get one week at home to start that 4 weeks, I think you do it. Again, it's not tanking, it's just trying to make sure we don't win by too much.
It's sort of tanking. It does manipulate a result. Hey, Lee, Nathan Buckley has finally done what people have been telling him to do for maybe 2 months. He's dropped Chris Dawes for this round 23 clash. What's it mean? Is he left it too late?
Well, what has been interesting is that their reserves don't play, so Chris Dawes can't go and play and regain confidence. And the thing that Dawes provides is the second ruck option to Jolly, unless they play Wood as well as Jolly. But they've left Wood out and they've left Dawes out. I don't know who the hell's going to fill in the ruck for Jolly or ruck if Jolly got hurt. But your views on your very best team change from week to week. I mean, through September,
it's strange though to stick with this.
Changes.
Is it not strange though to stick with this structure with Cloak and Dawes for so long, and then in the last round of the season change it?
Well, I think that maybe the performances forced them into that. Like in other words, Dawes, as they've waited, they've been patient, they've persevered. He's just not doing it. We've got to maybe try another option. We know we can always go back to him next week, but we've got to try another option, which is a more medium-sized group with Cloak being the one big tool.
What about yourself? In the premierships you won, have you made big changes so late in the season or even later?
Yeah, we have. I mean, Clark Keating came into the Brisbane team, I think, in 2002, about now, after playing a couple of months in the reserves when Jamie Charman was left out. Way back with Collingwood in 1990, we drew the first final and then decided Brian Taylor was sort of full forward, he had a bad knee, bit top heavy, we thought. So we decided to go with a much more smaller, agile group. So, and that, anything you do, the opposition get to know about. So some things that you can do for a few weeks. Your stability's good, but you always got to be prepared to change along the way, even through September.
You mentioned Chris Dawes there, and again to BT. Will Chris Dawes write a diary on what happens this year if they win the flag? Hey, Lee, grand final. Right now, just give us your selections. Who will play off in it right now?
Well, I've thought Hawthorn all year. They've finally got to the top of the ladder. They've been premiership favourite all year. So I go Hawthorn. I still like the Swans. The Swans of the MCG, of course, Rowie. They had a bad record there, but I just like the stability of their group. So I won't be radical. I'll just go for one and two to end up in the grand final.
Hey, reminder right now of the OPSM Fan Face-Off competition.
OPSM is giving you and a friend the chance to win the ultimate 2012 Toyota AFL Grand Final experience with the OPSM Fan Face-Off. Download the OPSM app and share your fan face to win.
So get your photos in, share it with your friends and get the votes up for your chance to win. Time now to give the result from our OPSM poll from Monday's show, which was where we asked this question: which team has been more disappointing in 2012, Essendon or Carlton? The Blues were the pick with our viewers. 61% said Carlton, 39% said Essendon. I'd probably go the other way, Lee. You?
Yeah, I would too. On the last month, I mean, Essendon's last third of the year's just been abysmal. So I think they'd be the most disappointing for me.
Hey,
compared to what they were early, when they were very good.
Yes. Hey, thanks for joining us around 23. We'll see you again next week in the finals. We will. And Luke Darcy and myself will join Matthew Richardson on Monday's edition of Access All Areas. We'll have plenty to chat about then. Make sure you click on to afl.com.au. Thanks for joining us today. Have a good weekend.